Welcome back to Face the Truth. Now, before our break, we learned the greatest commandment that we need to fulfill is to love God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. It is a commandment that many people believe they're actually obeying by their devotion and respect that they give to certain religious objects or items in their possession. Now, maybe it has something to do with popular culture. For example, if you walk into a teen's room, you can clearly see who their favorite artist, athlete, or cartoon characters are by the posters they have on their walls, their clothes, or pieces of jewelry. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a devoted fan. But when it comes to worshiping God, how do we prove our love for Him? Well, this is what is written in the book of 1 John chapter 5, and the verse is 3. It says this, "For this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome." Now, Apostle John said loving God is by keeping His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome or too difficult to follow. Now, there is no doubt that people believe they love God and follow His commandments. But what is one commandment that many people fail to understand and follow? In fact, in an attempt to prove their love for God, it actually has the very opposite meaning to God Himself. Now, what we're about to read to you is a common verse from the Ten Commandments that many people have even memorized. Now, these verses mention the first two instructions of God in the Ten Commandments. Let us read what's written in the book of Exodus chapter 20, and the verses are 3 through 5. "Worship no God but me. Do not make for yourselves images of anything in heaven or on earth or in the water under the earth. Do not bow down to any idol or worship it, because I am the Lord your God, and I tolerate no rivals. I bring punishment on those who hate me, and on their descendants down to the third and fourth generation." Take note, these are the first two commandments of God written in the Ten Commandments. God said, "Worship no God but me." Now, what does it mean? And what does God mean by that? Well, we should understand there's only one God that people should worship. Now, we just need to say this. People who worship more than one God violate this first commandment. Now, what is the second? He also strictly commanded, "Do not make for yourselves images of anything in heaven or on earth or in the water under the earth. Do not bow down to any idol or worship it, because I am the Lord your God, and I tolerate no rivals. I bring punishment on those who hate me, and on their descendants down to the third and fourth generation." Although what is written is clear, we want to emphasize that God forbids man to make idols or images that are used for worship. Now, how does God consider those who make and use images for worship or religious purposes? It's an act of hatred toward God, and He will certainly punish them. And so, though people's intention was to show God their devotion or their love, they've ended up doing the very opposite when they worship idols. Now, some would say that they only use the images to serve as a visual tool. These are things that they have to remind them of God. Now, they realize it's not God, but they say it's intended for Him, and so they believe it's okay to have them. Well, how does God Himself feel about those who use images intended for Him? Well, we will read the answer in the book of Isaiah. The chapter is 42, and the verse is 8. I alone am the Lord your God. No other God may share my glory. I will not let idols share my praise. You notice what God said? God said, I alone am the Lord your God. I will not let idols share my praise. Well, so much for that argument that the idols or images are intended for God. God will not share His praise or glory with images or idols. So when people have these idols in their homes or their religious buildings, it's already something that God despises. It's even worse if people bow down to or worship these images. Yet, today, so many people are doing so, and even if the Bible's teaching is clear and easy to understand that God forbids this, they still insist on this practice. And so how then does the Bible characterize people who make and worship images? We're going to stay in the book of Isaiah. This time we will read chapter 44, and the verse is 9. This is written, all those who make idols are worthless, and the gods they prize so highly are useless. Those who worship these gods are blind and ignorant, and they will be disgraced. The Bible calls those who make idols as worthless and the idols themselves as useless. These people are also called by the Bible as blind and ignorant. Now, why does the Bible call people who make and use and worship idols as blind and ignorant? Well, before we continue with what we will show you, we want to make something very clear. It is never our intention to offend anyone. Our sole purpose is to reveal the truth of God's words written in the Holy Scriptures. But what you may see next may be a little bit offensive. Let's take a look at this.
The carpenter measures the wood. He outlines a figure with chalk, carves it out with his tools, and makes it in the form of a man, a handsome human figure to be placed in his house. He might cut down cedars to use, or choose oak or cypress wood from the forest. Or he might plant a laurel tree and wait for the rain to make it grow. A person uses part of a tree for fuel and part of it for making an idol. With one part he builds a fire to warm himself and bake bread. With the other part he makes a god and worships it. With some of the wood he makes a fire. He roasts meat, eats it, and is satisfied. He warms himself and says, "How nice and warm! What a beautiful fire!" The rest of the wood he makes into an idol, and then he bows down and worships it. He prays to it and says, "You are my God, save me." Such people are too stupid to know what they are doing. They close their eyes and their minds to the truth.
Now, we read all these verses, and you've seen them, to give people a vivid picture as to what people are actually doing by making and worshiping images or idols. But verse 19 sums it up as to why people who do this are called by the Bible as blind and ignorant. And this is because they don't realize that they're just bowing down to a block of wood, or maybe stone, or some other material. In fact, some of the wood from the same tree, based on what we read, was used for fire to keep warm or to cook food. Now, why would people bow down to worship a statue or idol or a piece of wood or stone? It makes no sense, yet so many people today are doing this very thing. And so people need to understand that any form of image worship is a sin and direct violation of God's commandments, no matter one's intention. But did you know that there is a form of idolatry that many people are not aware of, which has nothing to do with the use of idols or images? And we'll find out what that is when we return on Face the Truth.